own State Representative Jim Knobloch on with us this afternoon. We will also have the Speaker of the House, Representative Kurt Doudt, will be joining us also, both live on KNSI. So you'll want to stick around this afternoon between now and 5 o'clock because we will have both of them on to talk. Right now, we have our own State Representative Tama Theis over in District 14A. And she's joining us live as well. Representative Theis, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm sure you're probably still trying to catch up on sleep a little bit. I mean, the end of session is always people. The headlines pretend that the craziness is new, that the chaos is something new. But I'll tell you what, under both Democrat and Republican majorities, the end is always a crunch. It always is.
Oh, it is. It is. And this time, I think a lot of us felt like we were really stretched quicker than normal because when we got there, knowing we only had, 10 weeks, it was fast and furious right away. Usually we have a couple of weeks to ease into it, but it was crazy like right away, and it just seemed like it really didn't stop. So we were nonstop the whole time. And so when we got to that last week, it really seemed like, it was a lot of, just a lot of waiting. And then it seems like during the day everything got fixed, pushed, talked about that whole thing, and then at night was when we basically were on the floor to see the things happen.
Yeah, I had predicted on this show over a week ago that it would be the typical glide path to end of session right down to the last minute with no fuel left in the tank. The wheels would touch the runway and the deal would get done. And that was exactly what seemed to have been engineered. And then some last second monkey games over on the Senate side appear to have kind of dynamited things. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a whole lot of work that got done and a lot of action right out of the chute. And then you work hard and you churn and burn. And then suddenly that last week or two, as the powers that be, the governor and the majority leader in the Senate and the Speaker in the House, they have to kind of figure out those big three pieces. And then everything kind of falls into place after that. But you're right. I mean, it's almost surreal, isn't it?
Well, it was. It was just a very different session with having the Capitol under construction, and it was just different. Everything was different about it. The fact that it was fast and furious right away. I mean, it was no spare minutes. If you weren't in committee, you were meeting with folks, and it just really kept that intensity. And of course, it seemed like once we hit, start hitting the big bills, when all the bills have been heard and they're starting to formulate, then you have a lot of people checking in on their projects, making sure that they get included and things like that. And being on capital investment, and this was my first session being on capital investment.
That's right. You're on the bonding committee.
Right. Those folks are there all the time. I mean, there's somebody there all the time, and there was a lot of jockeying around for what was going to be included and what wasn't. So, it just seemed like it was nonstop the whole time.
Well, and Representative Tama Theis, District 14A, here in the St. Cloud area, St. Cloud and St. Augusta, joining us on AM1450 FM 1033 KNSI's Ox in the afternoon. And so glad that she's willing to do that, especially after the kind of end they had. I'm sure she's a bit sleep deprived yet, but you also vice chair the Long-Term Care Committee in the House of Representatives. Correct. And I've got to believe that you got some good things done this session that aren't getting talked about right now in the midst of all of this talk of the end game.
Well, there isn't. Actually, we really didn't do a whole lot because our big piece was getting the nursing home reform. However, I was very excited, and quite frankly, I have to go through again and look. But I did have a grant. It was a $40,000 grant to a research agency, which most likely will go to Wilder, and they will be working with the U of M to do some research on products and basically finding a way that we can really zero in on the products that will work the best for monitoring at-home care. So if you want to keep mom and dad in their homes longer, but you want a way to monitor how they're doing, that's what we're trying to look at. How are we going to do that? And there was another, I did have one which I thought would have been excellent, and that was basically doing electronic records for nursing homes, giving them some money so that they would be able to afford the soft grade extras and upgrades that would take to do that. So if it didn't make it this year. The research did, but I've got to probably do some more work on that next time and see if we can't get that going forward. And of course, we always talked about the 5%, but truly it just wasn't there this year, and so we'll be hitting that big time next year.
Yeah, because so much. You're talking about the 5% for home and community-based services,
yes.
an increase in reimbursement there, because they're having a hard time finding labor, which is important. A lot of people getting cared for in their homes. That is so cool, though, that researching the technology necessary to monitor mom and dad or your loved one in place is going to be so important, particularly for rural areas.
Oh, yes.
We have a guy over at Tom Ardolf over at Cybermation here in Way Park.
Oh, yes.
Has been promoting those technologies for a long time. I remember back when I was in the legislature, he gave me kind of a dog and pony show of one of those, and it was amazing. So they had sensors and pads and things that told you, without being real intrusive of mom or dad, did they get out of bed? Did they put their foot down on the floor? Did they open the medicine cabinet? Did they open the refrigerator door? So you could kind of at least tell, oh, yeah, they're up and doing things, so they're okay. Or suddenly there's no activity on the monitors, and so now you got to have somebody go check on them. And that's really cool. Right.
In fact, we had Tom come in at the end of last year when we were still doing testimony and basically show us some of the products, because I've been aware, being in the remodeling and building industry, I've been aware of what Tom has been doing for quite a while, but it was really nice to bring him down and say, okay, folks, these are some of the things that are already out here. And I really appreciate all the work Tom does. And I think we're very fortunate in this area to know of a lot of this stuff already. But broadband was also a huge one for, believe it or not, aging and long-term care, because, again, that works hand-in-hand with telemedicine, especially where they need it way up north, where they're having a harder time finding docs and medical professionals. So hopefully this way it cuts down on some of the travel time that a lot of these folks have had to put up with.
Absolutely. I know it wasn't as much as some wanted, and it was more than others wanted, and so that's fine. And so the investment piece got done. There was some regulatory reform they were trying to accomplish for the private developers to get some more broadband done. That kind of fell on the cutting room floor too, but it's progress. It's forward motion.
It is. It is. And sometimes there's just a lot of misinformation out there, and I think that pretty much curtailed a lot of the private stuff. But with that being said, when Representative Ron Kreischer from Little Falls was doing the broadband, and he's been one of our point people on this.
Champion on that, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And what Ron had said is that, yes, we can fund more, but when we look at what's possible to do in this biennium, this is the amount of money that the folks really felt like this would make a huge amount of difference. So I would say stay tuned. There'll be more broadband on the horizon. But I think right now we're looking at more of the unserved, touching on underserved. There was a big argument about that.
Right.
But I think right now this is more, let's hit those that are unserved and do some things with that. In fact, it was really interesting that it was brought up to do Wi-Fi on school buses, and, a couple people just really had a hard time with that. But then Representative Dan Fabian, who's from Roseau, will tell you that his kids are on the bus for a long time.
Heck, my kids Wi-Fi are on the bus for a long time.
Yes, but up in Roseau, it's like 2 hours.
That's incredible.
So, this is a way, especially the kids who are in athletics. This way, they can do homework while they're riding to their sports,
Well, yeah.
It really, at first, it's kind of are you kidding me? So they can play. No, this is really, they can do homework now while they're riding to games and have access to Wi-Fi so they can get some of this stuff done. And so while, it may sound a little goofy, it truly is really worthwhile in some areas.
It really isn't. You're absolutely right, Representative Theis. By the way, Representative Tama Theis, District 14A here in the St. Cloud area, our very own, and the Vice Chair of the Long-Term Care Committee in the House of Representatives out of St. Paul. And she is joining us live on Ox in the afternoon here on AM1450 FM 1033 KNSI. But you mentioned, Representative Theis, expansion of broadband, and it really is more than just being able to play games or get stream video and that sort of thing. You mentioned telemedicine, very important for rural health care. And then you've also got, as you pointed out, kids being able to do homework. If you think about everything we do with our electronics nowadays, if you don't have that going for you, you're sentencing rural Minnesotans to a kind of a substandard living in a sense.
Well, exactly, because a lot of the products that we would look at to help people stay in their homes longer will rely on internet, or Wi-Fi. So it truly will make a big difference. Some folks don't think it makes that big a difference, but truly it will. It'll make a big difference.
No, it's considered a huge issue for rural economies, for rural health care, for rural education. So it really, if you talk about the areas outside of the Twin Cities or that are heavily served by broadband and internet services, it's something that's really needed in this day and age. And thanks to you for helping move that ahead, you and Representative Grisha.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't take you long to see the benefits of pushing it, but also doing it in a way that makes sense. I think that was one of the things, a lot of folks wanted to push a lot of money out there. And it's like, let's just do what we need to do right now and make it our priority. And then, sit back and reevaluate how much we need to do the second phase and third phase or whatever we want to call it. But right now, this makes a lot of sense. And so I'm just really, very proud of the work that Representative Grisha has done, and will continue to support him and help him in any way that he needs.
Well, and thank you for the work you've done, Representative Theis. We know it's a lot of hard work, and you're providing leadership down there, and that has been great. What do you think now? Is Governor Dayton going to sit down and kind of cool his heels a little bit and stop calling people names and call a special session to get this wrapped up, or what happens at this point?
Well, I would think that he's got to be having a lot of pressure because that bonding bill had a lot of good projects in for everyone across the state. St. Cloud had, it was kind of interesting. I made some phone calls yesterday, and there is $250,000 to do a regional study for the airport. And when I talked to Patty Gartland, she was not aware that was in it. So that was one component. And I'm very excited about doing things like that, but we've also got the remodel of Eastman Hall. And granted, this is a Department of Public Safety, but finishing the work at the correctional facility as well, the intake, because quite frankly, I just can't believe that we ask our folks that work there to work in these tight spaces with folks, intake and outtake. It's really quite scary.
Yeah.
So, those are some of the projects that I'm going to hit, touch on first, but just the money in roads and bridges. I mean, it just totally got hijacked. The bonding bill got hijacked by the Senate wanting to do transit, and we just said, look, we really need to do roads and bridges. That's where our focus needs to be, and, at the last moments, and,
Yeah, that doggone light rail transit just seemed to be, the Democrats simply could not do without it, and they decided to try to cram it in at the last minute, and it really kind of blew things up. Yes,
and it was not what we agreed on. We
Right.
agreed that, we would not do it. That was the agreement we were waiting for, and it, because of certain things, it took us longer to get that bonding bill to the floor, but it was really disappointing to see what the Senate did with it. Rather than pass it, they amended it, and, it was just really, really sad to see the session end that way.
Well, I'm sure you will get together and get it all back on track. But Representative Tama Theis, thank you so much for joining us live on Ox in the Afternoon on AM1450, FM 1033 KNSI. Get some rest. Say hi to that hubby of yours, and then go get it done. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And also, I heard you say that you're having Representative Knobloch here. I just want to say, folks, the supplemental bill was absolutely, he did a fantastic job. And, of course, that is Representative Knobloch's baby. He takes care of that.
That was huge.
I think he did a phenomenal job. So I just can't say enough how proud we are of Jim and the work that he's been doing. And talk about me being sleep deprived, that ain't nothing compared to what he goes through.
Well, and speaking of sleep deprived people, we're also going to bring the Speaker of the House on board with us. So that'll be interesting as well.
Yes.
Representative Tama Theis, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Get some rest. AM 1450, FM 1033, KNSI. It's Ox in the Afternoon. Come on back.